In today's story, one of my friends in elementary school gets hit by my teacher, and it's partially my own fault. Make sure to stick through the end if you want to know what happened, and enjoy. So to start things off, I need to give a little bit more context to the situation, or should I say, I need to give a little bit more context to the circumstances this all happened in. So I was 9 years old, and since I have a lot of people tuning in from the US, I would say that would be in grade 3. So the weird thing is, you might expect our class to be totally deranged. Like, I would say a class where the teacher starts contemplating the thought of wanting to hit a student. That must be a class with only trouble kids, right? But what makes everything so anticlimactic is the fact that we, our class, were actually really sweet children. So my elementary school is pretty much right in front of my house, and back when I was still living with my parents, I lived in a really quiet and kid-friendly neighborhood. And I would say that in general, all the kids in my elementary school were definitely on the more well-mannered side. Like, we barely had any people fight, both verbally and physically. And I would say that didn't really change throughout the years. Even the most quote-unquote troubled kids of my school were more likely to cause trouble outside of the classroom. So, for example, during the lunch breaks and after school. At least that was something that I always seen happening. I never heard any stories of any teachers slapping students in the classroom, because teachers always told us that in the country I live in, which is the Netherlands by the way, teachers are never ever allowed to lay a finger on the students under any circumstances. And in fact, since the year 1820, the Netherlands was one of the first countries in the world that implemented the new ban on corporal punishment in the educational system. So this is quite difficult to describe, but because of that, I always felt kind of a safe and I guess you could say friendly atmosphere when I was inside of one of the classrooms back in elementary school. And funnily enough, I felt safer inside than outside during lunch break, where kids could just walk up and straight up bully you. At least that's how I felt. But anyhow, our class had 2 teachers, and both of them were pretty nice, and both of them were ladies, I would say in their late 40s, early 50s. And one of the teachers I remember was extremely nice. Like, she was an angel. Like, she would never hurt anyone in a million years. And she was pretty reserved, never shared much about her life because she was kind of introverted, but she was nice anyways. I mean, it's not really bad for a person to be introverted or anything, because I'm introverted myself. But anyways, the other teacher, however, was kind of, let's say, at first glance also really nice, but sometimes she would have the weirdest reactions towards students. I would say she was pretty eccentric, way less introverted than the other teacher I was talking about before. So fast forward, one day I had a really nice sunny day on my doorstep. The weather was great and I went to school, and I kind of started to hang out more and more with a boy in my class who lately have gotten pretty interested in a particular video game. And I remember him taking his Game Boy with him to school to play the game during lunch break. It was one of those Game Boy Advance who had like a screen you could open up. It was one of those foldable Game Boys. And that dude was really struggling with a particular puzzle in a game. And I recognized that game and helped him out with the puzzle, as I also used to play that exact same game a while back ago, and I was also struggling with the exact same puzzle for the longest time ever. So that's kind of how we bonded, that's kind of how we became close friends. Anyways, I'm going to give this boy a name in this story so it will be easier to remember. Let's say his name is Ben. So over the course of this summer, Ben and I became really good friends, and he was a really good kid. He was so well-mannered, and his parents were really nice too. They were really welcoming, and I always loved playing with him. But he also had some mannerisms. In particular, he often would laugh at almost anything that he found funny. And with that, he found it really difficult to stop laughing when it wasn't appropriate to do so anymore. For example, if someone in class would make a dark joke and the class would be really quiet during a lesson where our class was supposed to pay attention, he would always get caught laughing, and the teacher would always get annoyed at him for clearly not paying attention to the very important lesson. Because clearly every lesson is super important in elementary school, and jokes aside, sarcasm aside, looking back at that time in my life, I realized that the teachers really thought they were important, way too important, I would say. So here is where the story gets spicy. But you know what is also super spicy? If you enjoy the content I provide, make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you never miss another one of my uploads. Let's continue. So the spicy part of the story really starts when one day, that sunny day I was talking about previously, me and my classmates go to school and my, let's say, eccentric teacher is present that day. So not the ultra nice introverted teacher I was talking about before. And the funny thing is, instead of teaching us math problems or geography, or another quote-unquote boring lesson, instead of that, she was bringing some old drawings with her of when she was going to elementary school herself, and some other drawings of when she was in art school. And to our surprise, she started to tell us a little bit more about her own life and some funny life stories she had. Like, she told us a pretty scary story, and I remember she told us that she was stuck on a mountain in Indonesia with her husband, and they were sitting in like a tourist bus, like a minivan, and the slope of the bus was so extremely steep that they literally had to move in front of it so it wouldn't fall off the mountain cliff. So as you can imagine, our class was sitting there and listening and pretty much having fun because we didn't have to do anything boring like math or history, for example. So eventually Ben, who was sitting next to me, was getting bored. Like, oh my god, even during that time, that lovely sunny day filled with funny life stories from our weird teacher, he was bored out of his mind because he really wanted to play on his Game Boy, so he pretty much couldn't wait until lunch break to play it. And the teacher then noticed that he wasn't interested at all, and then it happened, ladies and gentlemen. She totally snapped. Like, her mood did a complete 180 turnaround, and she screamed at us, "If you don't want to have a fun school day, we are going to have a boring history lesson instead. You have all earned this and it's entirely your fault." And holy smokes, at that point I was shocked. Me and pretty much the entire classroom. And some kids started to really get frustrated, and everyone started to stare at my friend Ben because of him making a noise. You know, everyone immediately thought to themselves that this was his fault for making our teacher so damn angry. However, some other people in the classroom started to protest. They started to object and whine to the teacher, and they said things like, "But why is it our fault? Ben was making the noise and not us." And then, ladies and gentlemen, then it happened. Our teacher started to yell at us. "Shut up! I don't want to hear another sound, and if I hear one single sound coming from one of your mouth, everyone will have to stay longer for detention and you would have to write 100 times, I must listen to my teacher on a piece of paper. And at that moment, she started to violently open the bookcase in our classroom like she was incredibly pissed for some reason. And I must admit, people were really confused on why she was so furious. Usually she was pretty nice and calm, but now something in her just snapped. So she opened the bookcase, dropped a stack of books on everyone's tables, and by the way, we were all sitting in, I guess you could say, groups of 5. So she dropped a stack of 5 books in the middle of every, I guess you could say, island of tables. And at that moment, the moment she started to violently drop the stacks of history books, it was so silent in the classroom. You could literally hear a pin drop on the ground. Now, here comes a very important detail. So I had a pencil laying on my table, and you can actually make the pencil do a couple of flips if you quickly tap on the pointy side of the pencil. And I always used to do that in elementary school when I was bored. So guess what happens? My teacher violently drops the stack of books right on the pointy side of my pencil, and because she did it with such a powerful throw, my pencil flew up into the sky, doing around 100 flips a minute, and me and my friend Ben, who was sitting next to me, were the only ones to see that happen. And do you remember what I told you in the beginning of this video? Ben easily laughs in the not so appropriate times, and when he does start laughing, he pretty much can't stop doing that. So after seeing that, I really had to suppress my laughter, and I pretty much just pinched myself really hard so I wouldn't laugh. But my friend Ben started chuckling a little bit, and at that moment, the whole class fixed their gaze on Ben, because he was the only person to make any sound throughout these 3 minutes of the teacher being incredibly pissed and throwing with books. So at that moment, the teacher grabs a book and with full force slaps my friend Ben on the back of his head. So yeah, everybody was completely shocked. And what happened next is we had the history lesson, nobody made a single sound. We finished school, went back home, and the next day, during the first hour, the teacher returned and apologized to us and apologized to Ben. And she told us that she was having a very bad day, but that still didn't mean that she was allowed to express her anger and frustrations on a fellow student. And she understood that. So it was really good that she apologized. Subscribe if you haven't already, press like if you enjoyed, then watch another story video popping up on the screen right now. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.